Here's example 2. Now this is from a different discipline. Before we begin, let's recap our 3 steps to understanding an essay question. First, we need to read the question. Second, we need to highlight the important keywords. And then third, we need to analyse what each individual word means. So, let's read the question. This question says, compare and contrast the ways in which the revolutions of '89 are approached in comparative politics, economics, and history. So this question is a bit longer, a bit more involved than our example number 1. But we're going to follow the same process. We're going to highlight the key words and phrases. Now before we begin, have a look, reread this question and have a think, which words or phrases do you think are going to be highlighted? Which ones are important? So first up, compare and contrast. Now these are some important words and you've probably seen them in essays before. Next up is revolutions of '89. Third is approached. Then comparative politics, economics, history. Now third, we're going to analyse what each of these individual words mean and why they're important for this question. So, first up, let's look at compare and contrast. So what do they mean? We're going to look at the similarities, the differences, the relationship between each other. These are what these words mean. They want you to take 2 things and look at them side by side. Just as if when you're out at the grocery store and you're picking up 2 pieces of fruit. Like you might have a red apple and you might have a green apple. How are they the same? How are they different? Next, revolutions. So I'm going to look at this slightly differently because revolutions, what does that word mean? So it means change. Is it violent, non-violent? It's uprising of people? It's political. Is it emotional? And now I've added question marks here because this is some of what we're going to look at in this question. 89. Now 89 refers to 1989. It's the context of this question. In 1989, it was the fall of the Iron Curtain, the end of the Cold War. So we're thinking about ideology, communism versus capitalism. Now, the revolutions of '89 together, we're looking at Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, Romania. They were different revolutions, and that's why there's some question marks next to violent and non-violent, because in the context of the time, in the context of study, or the different historians, political scientists, economists, they've got some different views, and we're going to be looking at this. But when we look at these words individually, and then the phrase revolutions of '89, we're going to be thinking about these things. Next, we're going to look at approached. What does approach mean? It's something, how do we look at it? Something that's analysed, viewed, method. And this refers to comparative politics. What's comparative politics? It's a field of academic study. It's a political scientist. It uses empirical study about domestic institutions and conflicts. What's economics? Well, it's also an academic field of study. It's concerned with production, consumption and distribution of commodities. And they're going to have a specific method of study. History. It's also a field of academic study. It's a humanities subject, and it's a study of past events. So here we have the different words, and we've looked at briefly what they mean. So what next? Well, we need to reread the question. Compare and contrast the ways in which the revolutions of '89 are approached in comparative politics, economics, and history. Now, even though you may not be a political scientist, you may not be an economist or a historian, you could still get a sense of what this question means. And you need to think, what is this question asking me? Let's use our notes on these different words to come up with an idea of what this question means. So this question is asking me to look at the different methods used in comparative politics, economics and history used to analyse the revolutions of 1989. And we want to look at how they're similar, how they're different, their relation to each other. Do these different fields of study in their methods approach with the revolutions the same or differently? And then specifically, do they look at the revolutions of 1989 the same or differently? And how could, if you want to go deeper into the question, these methods be used to show flaws in another method of study or strengths? Can we use them together? What are their value in relationship to each other, in relation to our wider field of study? Now, if you're a historian, could comparative politics and economics aid in your study of the revolutions of 1989? How, if you wanted to go deeper, could you compare the way that these different fields of studies looked at the revolutions in relation to other revolutions, potentially before or post 1989? So as you can see, through just analysing these different words, we can get a better idea of what this question means and how we can go even more in depth. So what's next? We're going to start brainstorming our answer.